Our top story. When we talk about women's safety, there is a common phrase many activists use. Nowhere is safe until everywhere is safe. In this day and age, that everywhere also includes airplanes. Now, you would imagine that planes are relatively safe spaces since there is constant monitoring and there is full visibility as well. But recent events suggest otherwise. We have seen drunk men urinating on women passengers not once but twice in the last 6 months. So, the Delhi Commission for Women has drafted a few suggestions to the Civil Aviation Authority, that's the DGCA. A few measures that the DCW feels will help protect women passengers from similar experiences. Let me list out some of the important ones. A. Prevent highly intoxicated passengers from boarding flights. The DCW says you need to develop new protocols to handle drunk passengers. We saw what happened in the Air India P-Gate episode. The crew had no idea what to do and they ended up trying to strike a compromise between the accused and the victim. Don't do that, says the Delhi Women's Commission. Instead, seat the victim as far as possible from the abuser. The third suggestion promises to be a controversial one. The DCW says limit the intake of alcohol on board flights. Some of the other suggestions include installing CCTV cameras. That would help avoid all this confusion about who did what on board flights. The DCW says it's simply unacceptable that under current guidelines, there is no category for sexual harassment on board. That needs to change. The DCW has recommended a separate committee headed by a retired woman judge to probe cases of sexual harassment on board. It wants FIRs to be filed in cases of sexual harassment cases. It also wants more punishment for those found guilty. The DCW wants people involved in sexual harassment to be put on the no-fly list for 2 years, not 6 months. Now, these guidelines, says the DCW, will be key to preventing a repeat of what happened on Air India's Delhi flight last year. But the question is, will the DGCA make these rules compulsory or will there be a pushback from airlines? Let me put that question very quickly to my guests who are joining me this evening for a very quick chat. Sarosh Damnia is an aviation lawyer. He's joining us on the broadcast. Deepika Narayan is an activist with us. And Charu Wali Khanna is a former member of the NCW. She's also a senior advocate with us. Charu Wali Khanna, what do you make of the suggestions that the DCW has now sent to the DGCA? I mean, they all seem to be right-minded, but are they practical?
She's very concerned about women's safety, but that's not the way the system functions. And to say that sexual harassment is not defined is again incorrect, because there are rules and regulation. And as the aviation lawyer will expand, we are bound by the Tokyo Convention and the Montreal Convention, and which clearly say that the aircraft commander has the right to restrain the person. And IATA rules define what is a disruptive passenger, what is a unlawful act, and what is an unruly passenger. And in unruly, the examples are also given: sexual harassment, verbal abuse, riotous behavior. You will see, if you, especially these Thailand flights, you will see groups of men, women, they're singing songs and they're speaking loudly. And as far as the unlawful act is concerned, which is clearly defined in Article 1, which says unlawful act of the state of which the aircraft is registered. As I just want to inform your viewers, every aircraft has a nationality. That's why you'll see the flag. So that law is applicable. So if we are talking about domestic aircrafts, firstly, alcohol is not served in domestic flights. Secondly, Article 336 of Indian Penal Code talks about endangering the personal safety of a person in which the punishment is given. So I think it would be better if she writes to the parliamentarians if she wants an amendment in the criminal justice system. And just to say that, you know, to increase this and increase that, it does not help. The burden of
very quickly, I just want to ask you this. This is going to be a short chat. One of the things that the DCW is saying, and Swati Maliwal is saying, is this. She's saying, A, it's shocking that sexual misconduct or harassment is clubbed under unruly behavior. It's not unruly behavior. And when that happens, you need to have a separate committee to probe it. You need to have a separate committee that is headed by a former judge, a woman judge to head it. Is that practical? Is that something you agree with?
Are you asking me? It's absolutely, I mean, it's not the law.
Yes, Charu,
Why
I'm
doesn't she
asking
want to follow the law? There's an act for sexual harassment. There's an act for there's a protocol. The commander is supposed to, aircraft commander is to inform the police. IATA says try to de-escalate. Every case will become a criminal case and nothing will happen about it, knowing our criminal justice system of tariq pe tariq. So first is that the passenger, the crew is trained to de-escalate the matter. And after that, restrain the passenger. And if required, even take the, the help of other passengers. And all aircrafts even have handcuffs. It's just that, unfortunately, the crew was not well trained when that incident happened in the first class or business class. So it's not about law. It's about our own mindset, our own people who are traveling. Are they not supposed to have some responsibility? Is the entire burden on the airlines? And when the airline is in this commercial business, they have a responsibility to train their crew in techniques of, handling such passengers, because these passengers are increasing.
Okay, Saroj Damni, you're saying these passengers are increasing, and yes, there have been way too many incidents for us to ignore what is happening. Saroj Damni, as an aviation lawyer, what do you make of the guidelines that have been suggested by the DCW? Now, one of the things that Swati Maliwal says needs to be done is to tackle drunk passengers even before they board the flight. She says you can easily identify people who have had, too many drinks. You can stop them at, you can stop them at security. You can stop them wherever, in the seating areas, etc. Just don't let them board flights. It'll make life simpler for many, many people, including the crew.
See, of course, I have read the letter, what she has written. Most of the things she has suggested already exist, maybe not in maybe a concrete one-page circular or everything together, but there are aircraft rules in which Section 24 stipulates about not consuming alcohol on flight or not being intoxicated on flight. So getting a drunk, to stop a drunk passenger getting on a domestic flight, at least there is Section 24 of the Aircraft Act, which already existed long back. Of course, as far as international passengers, international flights are concerned, there has to be an understanding that DGCA just cannot haphazardly implement some rules separately or some rule only for India. So international flights are bound by a lot of treaties, conventions, which the countries, that is the India, has signed with other countries. There are also other international associations of airlines such as ITA in its AGM, where in 2014 this unruly passenger issue had come up over there, and thereafter lot of countries have implemented it, and it has to be implemented uniformly in all the countries. So India cannot have a completely separate provision for unruly passengers and some other country can have it, because these are international standards that have to be maintained. Now, one way we are telling India should become, India is becoming a global country now, international travel is happening. So we have to maintain international standards and international protocols. So that is why DGCA cannot, just on suggestion of DWC, this is a problem, cannot change it. And of course, as far as the law is concerned, there is adequate protection given. Of course, implementation was not there, I think, but after the Air India incident and all, airlines have become quite proactive. They are implementing it. Unruly passengers, there are FIRs being filed on, I think, one other incident which happened for American Airlines. Immediately an FIR was filed. Thereafter, there was some incident on Indigo and Goa Airways also, wherein the passengers who were drunk were deported from the flight and FIRs were applied. So airlines have also become quite proactive.
Saroj, but the point she is making is don't let them board the flight in the first place. Saroj, the point she is making is why let them board the flight in the first place? If you have someone who's already drunk, why let them board the flight?
So there are a lot of guidelines. There are a lot of airlines who already implement that that is being implemented. There might not be any official specific rule about that, but as per Section 24, a person who is in an intoxicated state can be denied to board the flight. So already there is a provision that exists. So of course there is a different provision of the Act. So as I told, there are provisions already in place It has only have to be implemented properly.
Okay.
DGCA also has recently also had issued a circular
So I think
to
Charu and
airlines
you
how
both
to
have
handle.
argued. I think both what you and Charu have argued is the fact that there are already guidelines in place, and whatever the DCW is saying in their circular/letter to the DGCA, well, there are no new suggestions there. A lot of it already exists. Deepika Naran Bharadwaj, would you want to come in here then? The fact is that there have been concerns raised after the entire P-Gate incident takes place. In fact, there are two incidents that happen in a span of 6 months. If the DCW comes out concerned and says there needs to be a protocol to protect women on board flights, well, it is well-intentioned. Now, protocols may exist, they may not exist, but the fact is that we know now that those protocols were simply not being followed. So there's no harm in the DCW writing to the DGCA, or is there?
Shreya, I personally feel that this is absolute unnecessary pressure which is being put on an airline which is already working under tremendous pressure. Airline industry already has so many things to take care of, and then we have these guidelines now being issued by DCW and it coming in media everywhere. I personally, Shreya, see this as, you know, a zest of DCW to make everything about men versus women. There have been so many incidents where there have been women also have been unruly. It happened just in January, very close to the P-Gate incident. There was a woman who was absolutely intoxicated, spat at the crew, punched them, you know, went semi-nude. So it's not about men versus women. She is now saying that single women should be sit with only women. I have traveled so many times alone. There are very good male passengers, there are very good female passengers. There can be bad men, women everywhere. So I think this, first of all, this entire guideline is misguided because, like the panelists said before me, there exist provisions. You don't need to segregate each and everything about women. There are people who have to protocols, who have guidelines on how to handle unruly things. There can be separate behaviors. Now, you can not have guidelines for each and every single wrong. That is absolute undue pressure. And I don't think, Swati Maliwal, maybe the intentions are right, but I personally see this as absolute unnecessary pressure on an organization without having a proper understanding of how the airline industry works.
Charu, is this, you know, are these suggested guidelines? I mean, these are guidelines that have been suggested. The DGCA can choose to accept them, not accept them. Airlines can choose to accept them, not accept them. But is this unnecessary pressure that the two incidents have already shaken the aviation industry enough to take their protocols seriously?
Are you asking me this question? Hello? Are you asking me the question?
Charu.
Who is the...
Charu, this question was for you.
For me? Well, I think the good thing,
Yes,
I mean,
it is
we
for
have
you.
to
Go
always
ahead.
see things. We have to see things on the brighter side. And I feel that because these 2-3 incidents that have taken place, and I would say the lack of handling, not appropriate handling of the situation by the crew and the fallouts, it's created, the issue has been highlighted. And due to which now I'm assuming and hoping that the protocols will be implemented in the right spirit that they have been formulated. And as far as, you know, stop people, what do you mean by drunk passengers? Then tomorrow you'll say close the bars in airports. All airports, as far as I know, Delhi airports has a number of bars. Either you're going to start becoming like then make it a dry state, make it a dry country. I mean, let's not get over-obsessive about things. I mean, are we saying that like when you have a drunken driver test, every passenger who boards, the moment you show your boarding pass, are you going to make them do an alcohol limit test? I mean, let's be reasonable, let's be balanced.
And another thing, Shreya,
there's nothing wrong in drinking alcohol. Even without alcohol, people misbehave. Then what about that? The point is that we have to accept that we have a very large population of people, men, women, everyone, who just don't know how to behave in a civilized manner in public spaces. And they have not been taught, nor are they being taught, nor is being included in the education system, unfortunately. And the moment they go out especially in a plane or in a holiday, they feel that we are free. We are free from all bondages. And that's when, they become loose, they start misbehaving. So I think to stop this misbehavior, maybe in the announcements, the crew can make a kind of a warning that please, these are the rules. Just kind of tell them about the rules, so that will register, and I think that will prevent people from misbehaving. Because, suddenly they feel, oh, we're now on our own and we're loose and, we can do anything, and the air hostess is going to come and there's a girl.
Deepika,
and
I can give you 10 seconds, Deepika. Okay.
I totally agree with what Deepika said. You cannot segregate men and women.
No, actually, to be fair, that is not what the DCW letter says. I've read the entire letter and the contents myself. It doesn't say that seat women passengers with women passengers. It doesn't say that anywhere. Deepika, I can give you 10 seconds. You wanted to add to a point that Charu was making.
I just wanted to add, Shreya, that it has suggested, asking people to be banned from flying for 6 months or 4 months. I just wanted to say that there are authorities
for 2 years.
Who deal
for 2
with
years.
These. Yeah, and more.
For 2 years.
And more. And just mere allegations now, then, maybe verbal spats would also be seen as sexual harassment, sexual, allegations. And then you just ban a person for 6 months, 2 years. I think the airline industry is pretty equipped to handle these. Of course, these are bad incidents that happened the last 2 months. But let's not, I don't think so there is any need to exaggerate this.
Okay, I think then all three of you are saying that the DCW's guidelines are a bit misguided. We'll leave it there for the moment. Saroj Damnia, good to have you on the show. Deepika Narayan, good to have you on the show as well. And Charu, thank you very much for joining us here on Mirror Now. Thank you very much indeed. Let's get to our second lead this evening.